Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Today I'm going to be building this classic F1 car, the Williams Renault FW14B, which was driven in the 1992 Formula 1 season by Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. I'm going to be building the Nigel Mansell version, and this is the Fujimi 1/20th scale kit. If you haven't seen the Fujimi F1 kits before, they really are excellent, definitely on par with Tamiya in terms of their quality, and the advantage is they have a lot more recent F1 cars than Tamiya do. So I'll have a quick look inside the box. The first thing to notice is the decals. Because this is a modern release, it doesn't have tobacco sponsorship, so I did buy a replacement set of decals for that. Of course the kit decals look great, and I do feel like I've wasted half of them because of this. The other advantage of the replacement set is they do have Mansell's helmet decals there as well. Unusually for taboo designs, they don't have a placement guide for every individual race. They only have one generic guide. I'm not sure, maybe the Williams was quite consistent in terms of its sponsorship throughout the season. The other thing that the kit includes, which is really worth noting, is this masking sheet. It's really useful for colour schemes like this. I built Fujimi's FW16 as well a while ago, and the same thing, it had a masking sheet that really helped with that scheme there. So nice inclusion there. The instructions are very similar to Tamiya instructions. To be honest, there's not many ways you can build an F1 kit. The engine goes in two halves, the suspension attaches to that, the cockpit goes in normally in two halves. These Fujimi kits do have some extra detail in terms of painting though. Here you can see it tells you all the colours of the little sort of bits and pieces on these panels. Whereas you don't normally get that in a Tamiya kit, normally it just says something like paint it semi-gloss black. There's also a sprue of chrome plated parts for the exhaust and the radiators. The radiators I'll probably use as is. I'll probably have to paint the exhausts, partly because I don't quite like that colour for them, and also because when you cut them from the sprue and clean them up, it does scrape away the chrome, so some touch-up will be needed anyway. There's no driver figure included in the kit, but I did decide to try to use a spare Tamiya driver figure in there. It kind of fits okay in the seat, but actually as you'll see later on in the video, it just wasn't going to work, and in the end I abandoned the idea. Okay, so on with the build, and as with all F1 kits, the key is to get as many subcomponents built up as you can, and then try and paint them in blocks if possible. So here you can see the issue I had with the Tamiya driver figure in the Fujimi seat. His legs just won't go through the control panel. And I did actually cut those down. I did sort of shave his legs down a little bit to make it fit. What I normally do in a situation like this is just glue the seat into one half of the cockpit, but then keep the two sides closed just to keep the alignment correct while the glue's drying. And here is the problem with the Fujimi figure. You can see that even though he fits in the cockpit, when we put the arms on, they're way too long, and in fact they reach back past the control panel. Way past the steering wheel. Now I know what I could do is bend the arms or shorten them or something, but actually I've changed tactic, and I'm just going to use this spare helmet I've got and just put the Mansell helmet decals on there. The kit doesn't include seat belts, so I've made my own using a folded over strip of masking tape. And they will go through the holes in the seat there, and I'll glue those down onto the seat surface so they lay flat. And of course they'll be painted as well. And once they're painted red, I think they look okay, and I can glue those down to the seat to keep them in position. One of the hard things when building these F1 kits is making sure that the surfaces are free of paint when you join them together. If you've got paint on the joints, it really weakens that bond there, and you can have the kits just fall apart in your hands later on, or fall apart on the shelf. The fit isn't too bad here. It doesn't look great because of the black that's oversprayed from earlier painting, but actually the gap is smaller than you think. although I do need to use a little bit of filler there. Both the front wing and the nose are really easy components to assemble, and the fit's excellent. One nice little detail is that the kit includes 3 different versions of these panels on the engine cowling depending on whether it's the British, Monaco or Hungarian Grand Prix. I've chosen the British Grand Prix version. The included paint masks are really useful, and when cutting them out from the sheet it's a really good idea to try to not damage the outside of the mask as well. In other words, the light yellow area. So I'm going to paint the camel yellow on this piece first, so I will use the strip in between A and B to mask the camel yellow, and then when the camel yellow is dry then I'll use the actual A mask on top of it, and that will allow me to paint the blue on the rest of the piece, if you see what I mean. And the advantage of that is I don't just paint the entire piece yellow and then mask off the one bit I want to stay yellow and paint the blue over the yellow. Equally here at the top of the engine cover, this mask F covers the camel yellow, but I want to cut around that and use the outside of that mask first of all to give me some guidance of where to paint the camel yellow. As you can see, I've painted the engine cowling white, and then this C mask will go down, it will just stay down. It's important to remember that this piece at the back also needs to be masked over as well, but that's not part of the mask which is included in the kit. In fact, the instructions in Japanese do tell you to use your own masking tape for that area. There's also that sneaky little elf logo there which peeks into the yellow, and that also has a mask. These are the paints I'll be using. I do prefer to airbrush where I can, but these two colours are not available in regular acrylics, so rattle cans it is. The trick with these I think is to keep the cans fairly far away from the model so that you don't flood the surface. If you do that it tends to leak under the masking tape. If you spray from a distance it's a bit more wasteful for paint, but I think the final results are much better. Here is the vehicle after spraying the camel yellow. There are a few minor runs under the masking tape, but they can be removed quite easily. And there's a little bit of a paint ridge as well next to the masking tape, despite the fact I did try to spray quite lightly, but that can be removed if with some really fine sandpaper. You can very gently reduce that ridge. As you can see here, I painted up this little panel which goes under the nose cone. There's lots of good indication of detail there on the instructions. But when I came to put it in place, it didn't fit properly. Or rather, it fits properly itself, but when we come to put the panel on top, that top panel no longer sits flush with the rest of the bodywork. It just doesn't quite look right. I know I could sand it, but it's quite a complex surface in terms of the curves, and I feel like if I sanded it, I would probably end up making a mess of it in some way. Also, I'm not really likely to be sort of taking the model apart again and having a look inside it and so on, so I decided just to leave that piece off in the end. I didn't attach the exhaust until just now because I had a few problems with them. They either will fit nicely into the holes on the engine block here, or they will fit nicely onto the exhaust holes on the under tray, but not both, which is quite annoying. So in the end I just had to have them not sticking out the under tray. And again, I'm not really going to look at the car from the underside, so that's not a huge problem, but it is a little bit annoying. As you can see here, the line between the blue and the white isn't perfect, but once we put down the decal of the pinstripe, which is red but it also has a solid piece of white on it, it neatens that up nicely, and all those imperfections go away. I thought this Renault decal would be quite difficult because of the complex shape of the engine cover, but actually it went down really well. And these Taboo design decals give you Mansell and Patrese, but also decals for Hill and Prost and Gilles de Ferran as well. Obviously Hill and Gilles de Ferran were test drivers in 1992, and of course Prost signed for the team at the end of the season. Most of the time I use the replacement decal set, but in this case I actually use the kit ones because the kit green here is much lighter and much more accurate than the replacement sets. The kit supplies two ELF logos, the plain one without the background and one with a solid background, but unfortunately that solid background doesn't match the paint colour, so I'm going to have to just touch this square up here and use the plain one. The tyre decals are similar to the Tamiya tyre decals. I'm not quite sure what you call this type, if it's dry transfer or something, but they don't work like regular water slide decals. One tip I found for putting these on is that you should put the wheel inside the tyre first, because if you don't, if you put the decal on first, as you try to get the wheel inside the tyre flexes quite a lot, and it can often crack and cause the decal to fall off. Okay, that was the last step of the build, so let's see the final result with some classic F1 commentary.
Mansell weaving this way and that way, but Senna won't let him past. He's got the racing line, he's going to keep it. This last lap coming up, of course, is going to be the crucial one. And Nigel Mansell comes out of Luffield 1 into Luffield 2, which is the last corner but one. They're breaking ranks, the Union Jacks are waving, and Nigel Mansell wins the 1992 British Grand Prix in terrific style.
Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm quite pleased with the result. It's going to look very nice next to my FW11 and my FW16. This lockdown has limited my ability to get some modelling materials, but it has given me a bit more time to make a few things. I've currently got several 1/35th scale armour kits in progress, which should be coming up soon. A French kit, a British kit and a German kit, and another F1 car as well, which is probably about 60% built at the moment, and a little diorama or two in progress as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and if you'd like to see some upcoming videos, then please remember to hit the subscribe button. And until next time, thank you and goodbye.